Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Michael PokeYap here. This is my longest video yet, and there's not going to be a lot of me in it. Well, actually, I'm in all of it, but visuals, I mean. Soon enough, I'll cut this screen off, and it's just going to go to a blank screen. And it's going to be audio for the rest of the video. David, his name is, of course, reached out to me on email, and he wanted to have a chat about Pokemon investing. He runs a successful Spotify Pokemon channel where he does a lot of podcasts on there, and he wanted to reach out regarding Pokemon investing. So we had a pretty long chat. It went for well over an hour, I believe. So this is one of those videos where there's not going to be graphics on the screen. It's not going to be me pointing at things and talking about things. It's literally going to cut to a screen. So if you want to pop the headphones in while you're going for a long walk, if you want to pop the Bluetooth on in the car while you're going for a long drive, if you want to put the telly on while you're doing some housework or some ironing or washing up or something like that, and just have a listen. David and I address all things Pokemon investing for the next hour and a half. So enjoy.
Good morning, everybody. Welcome to PokeYap, the show dedicated to bringing you all the latest news, updates, and trends in the Poke investing, collecting, and card gaming communities, hosted by yours truly, PokeVid. We've got an awesome show lined up for you guys today with a very, very special guest. Also, don't forget, folks, in the description you will find my Whatnot link to sign up and get free credit using my referral link. Go sign up now. We've got an awesome Pokemon community on Whatnot. Can't wait to see you there. And without further ado, let's get on to the segment. Alrighty, everybody, welcome to today's segment. I have a very special guest with me. We're going to talk investing, collecting, trading, so many things on the show today. Go ahead and introduce yourself, my friend.
Hey mate, or hey everyone, hey listeners, it's PokeOz here. You might have come across me if you're in the Pokemon investing in particular space or even collecting space. You might have come across me on YouTube, all the way from sunny Australia, the other side of the planet. So I'm sure most of your listeners are chilling out in the US. So g'day from Australia. Yeah, it's PokeOz here.
And PokeOz, tell me a little bit about yourself. What got you into the investing and collecting side, and has it been something you've done for a while? Did you get back into it recently, like a lot of us did with like 151? Just tell me a little bit about your journey with where you're at.
Well, it's been a pretty long journey in Pokemon. Like everyone, I'm not sure about your age, but I'm in my early 30s. I'm 33, so I started all the way back when in 1999 with the original base set, saving up some pocket money and going down to the shops to buy it. And I suppose the only time I really petered out, like it continued all the way through, obviously Jungle, Fossil, etc., E-Series, the only time it probably really petered out was at the very start of EX era. It's probably when I was, 16, and it was not cool maybe to play with Pokemon cards anymore in grade 9 or 10 of high school. So I had a couple of year hiatus, and then at the start of college, I think we're set up a bit differently down here in Australia. You guys with your high school, college, university side of things, it's probably a little bit different down in Australia. But probably when I was back 17 again, I started collecting back again pretty heavily. So I had about a 2-year hiatus. And it was right around the time of sets, big sets like EX Deoxys, EX Crystal Guardians, EX Holland Phantoms, those, really, really coveted sets. Now, it was funny because they were so readily available in Australia. Like you go into any supermarket, we have Kmart down here, not Walmart, but you can go into Kmart or Coles or Woolworths. There are big, sort of supermarkets down in Australia, and they're on the shelf for years at like $2.95 a pack, and I just can't get over how coveted those sort of EX series is now. And then obviously continued all the way through Diamond and Pearl, Heart Gold, Soul Silver, Black and White, XY, become pretty big again during that Pokemon Go craze. If you've seen those sort of graphs with people in the hobby, it really spiked pretty hard, obviously with the introduction of sets like Evolutions. And then in terms of the actual investing side, I just realized over years that I just opened so many packs, so many booster boxes at EX era in particular. Like, man, I wish I'd kept them sealed.
Yeah.
But that's what I used to do. That was my hobby. I'd open packs and I'd sell the singles off. And, you know, if I made $40 off a booster box when I was 17 years old, I thought I had a pretty good side hustle going on. It turns out how wrong I could be. And then probably around when a lot of people started getting back into that real, I guess I sort of saw that lockup phase when everyone was locked inside and a lot of money started turning towards the hobby. I thought, you know what, let's stop opening Pokemon cards and let's start not opening Pokemon cards and keeping them sealed. And I'd never seen Pokemon as a money, other than opening packs and selling singles, I'd never seen it as a money-making exercise in terms of, you know, keeping boxes sealed and letting them appreciate. So that started for me, I guess, right at the start of 2020 that I started that with some of the latter half of Sun and Moon sets. You know, Cosmic Eclipse, Unbroken Bonds was still at pretty cheap prices, probably, you know, $220 Australian, which might be about 130 US. Mm-hmm. We all know where those sets are sort of sitting at the moment.
Right. And
it just continued all the way through. And then I just really started analysing it. Obviously, Sword and Shield base, Sword and Shield came out, which was a massive hit for Nintendo Switch. And, you know, sets like, I have a bit of a soft spot for it, even though it's half an awful set, but sets like Vivid Voltage, that was the real COVID boom sort of set. That was crazy, that hunt for the Rainbow Pikachu. And then obviously the second half of Sword and Shield just went absolutely gangbusters in terms of the art and obviously those alternate art Pokemon cards. And ever since then, I thought, you know, this is actually proving to be quite fruitful. We started seeing some serious gains on some of the latter Sun and Moon sets and some of the early Sword and Shield sets, except Darkness Ablaze and Vivid Voltage. And then for me, it was just I think it was a TikTok that sparked the whole YouTube side for me. It was basically someone that started YouTube maybe 2 or 3 years ago, and they were showing how successful it had been for them, and also this whole notion behind, you know, creating content rather than consuming it. We all sort of go home after work or whatever it might be, after the gym or after playing sport, and we, you know, can park ourselves on the couch for a couple of hours, and before we know it, you know, 2 or 3 hours have passed, and all we've done is, you know, scroll through, you know, Instagram or TikToks, and, you know, that sort of thing can't really be good for our creativity. So from my point of view, I thought, well, rather than sit down on the couch consuming other people's content, why don't I start creating my own? And that's where the YouTube journey sort of started for me. I think that just about sums it up from 1999 through to 2024.
Yeah, that's so awesome. And it's funny because I remember coming across your YouTube channel when I recently got into the more investing, kind of selling around and collecting side. And I was always so intrigued with how I don't want to say nonchalant, but how just happy-go-lucky and very easygoing you are in just every video, especially when it comes to even topics that are either controversial or maybe heated topics. It's just always so neutral and very positive, and that was the thing that I sort of gravitated to with your channel. So, and it's interesting too, you bring up like Holland Phantoms and the EX era, because that was, so I'm about to be 25 in a couple months.
Yep.
And so those were kind of the sets, even though I did grow up with like Gen 2 and Gen 3 because of my brother, I really didn't get into Pokemon around, it wasn't until Gen 4 with Diamond and Pearl, and those were all the cards that I had. And I remember very similarly, just either saving pocket money or allowance, or what birthday money, whatever it was at the time, and opening so many going to the store with my mom or my dad after school and just getting a pack, or getting a booster box. Or I remember for my birthday getting a booster box. And it's so funny now. I look at it, I'm like, man, all the cards that I still have at least 2 or 3 huge binders just neatly, because I knew the value of them because my brother collected. And he always told me, this is how you put them in the binder. You need to sleeve them up like this. And I don't know where those binders of cards went. They're somewhere in a storage probably. And it's kind of been my journey the last couple of years to really find where they went, because I know there are some cards in those binders that are just insanely priced and they're just sitting collecting dust. So I'd love to find those, but it rang that kind of nostalgia bell for me when you brought up the EX era, just because that's what I grew up with. And to see that almost become vintage now, it's funny, like one more year and those 1 or 2 more years and those will technically be considered vintage.
Yeah.
So it's kind of crazy to see that, but yeah, it's awesome. It's great to have you on today and do a little bit of talking and discussing. The first so actually for you, I'm gonna have on my screen here a couple pages. You should be able to look at my screen through your phone.
Yep. Raging Bolt EX.
Let's see. Oh, that might be the wrong. Let's see. Try this one. There we go. Okay. So the thing that I wanted to start talking about was these Sword and Shield sets that are kind of starting to see either a fluctuation in price, mostly going up. And I feel like a lot of people, like I've asked people, I'm like, what do you think about like a set like Astral Radiance or Lost Origin or Fusion Strike? And a lot of people seem to not really be super focused on them. And what I love about your channel is you always talk about these sets that maybe many people aren't talking about right now. So I wanted to get just kind of what you're thinking about with these sets too. Like if we look at the booster boxes for Astral Radiance, we've seen in the last year or so, it's kind of recovered from a really big price dip that it took. And you're kind of seeing these sets go up. Same thing with Lost Origin too. It's kind of really been on a huge incline since like November of last year. It's already almost at $200 for a booster box. Same thing with Fusion Strike, especially too. That one shot up recently within the last couple months. So when it comes to the investing side for these sets, I'm curious what your opinion is on these sets. Do you see value in them? What do these trends say to you, and what have you observed in the last few months, at least when it comes to these sets in particular?
Yeah, I'll touch on each one individually. I've always said all along Astral Radiance is a bit of a sleeper set. It's funny because as each generation goes by, there's a lot of similar sets, and maybe it might skip a generation, but like I can't really remember a huge a ghost set from Gen 7, a ghost psychic set from Gen 7 like Fusion Strike. But then if you look back to XY era, you of course had the ghost fusion set in there. So it's funny though, but like a set like Astral Radiance is, if you were to compare it to something from Sun and Moon era, like surely it's got to be similar to Cosmic Eclipse.
Right.
Like the two, it's quite often they have really similar titles, and we've seen it, Hidden Fates, Shining Fates, Paldean Fates. Like every single era seems to, or every single generation, I should say, seems to follow similar sort of trends in terms of the sets. And so I've got a pretty simple philosophy when it comes to looking at it, and it's really no different to the most basic economic principle of supply and demand. So if there's plenty of supply in the market and not much demand for it, we're obviously not going to see a price movement. Whereas if the opposite occurs, supply starts drying up and there's lots of demand for something, then we'll start seeing price shifts. And that's what we've seen in these Sword and Shield sets that you've got on the screen at the moment, the Astral Radiance, the Fusion Strike, the Lost Origin. Now, just because a set doesn't have heaps of supply left doesn't always mean it's going to like absolutely fly to the moon. It's also got to have some basic principles behind it. Like it needs to have good Pokemon or good chase cards or, you know, depth of chases inside it. And if we compare that all the way back to like EX era, you know, something like an EX Deoxys or an EX Team Rocket Returns, which has some really, really strong chase cards and then also lots of depth of chase cards in comparison to a set like EX Sandstorm, which has no real strong chase card and not heaps of depth of chase cards, we can see those booster boxes, although on a much larger scale, you know, you're probably talking 50 grand for an EX Deoxys booster box versus you could probably pick up an EX Sandstorm booster box for 15 grand or 12 grand. So it's, you know, 3 times or 4 times the price if you scale it long term. So what we're starting to see with a lot of these Sword and Shield sets is supply finally drying up. I think a lot of people were under the impression that they were just printed into the absolute ground, that we're never going to see price increases on them. And the conversation's nearly already starting to turn to Scarlet and Violet. People are going, oh, well, yep, Sword and Shield's done it. It's, you know, it's going to go up and it's going to the moon, or it is going up. And now it's Scarlet and Violet's turn. Nah, that's been overprinted. It's sitting on shelves. It'll never move. So that's what we're seeing with these sets. And coupled with that, we're also seeing, you know, the rotation come out very shortly for sets like Fusion Strike, Chilling Reign, etc., that are moving. Anything with an E symbol in the bottom corner of the card means it is moving out of competitive rotation. And I think in the last 5 years, there's been one set that was perhaps reprinted or it was either reprinted or there was just a bunch of leftover stock because it was so heavily printed in its first, second, and third wave that it was then distributed back on allocation to stores, which was Shining Fates.
Right.
I think in the last 5 years, that was literally the only set out of rotation that stores could pick back up on an allocation or a distribution policy. So what we can almost safely say is these sets will never be printed again. There's some reasons, I think, for Astral Radiance coming out of stock quicker than sets like Lost Origin and Silver Tempest, the two either side of it, in that back in the third quarter of 2023, Lost Origin and Silver Tempest, as well as Scarlet and Violet base, got reprints, whereas Astral Radiance didn't see a reprint. So it got a big initial print and then it got a small sort of second wave in allocation, but it never got that big sort of second or third reprint that Lost Origin and Silver Tempest saw. And another way to look at that is to also look at PSA 10 populations, or not PSA, just total graded populations, sorry. And Astral Radiance has quite a low total graded population. I think there's about 45,000 graded cards in comparison to, you know, Lost Origin, which is pushing 100,000 graded cards now. You could argue Lost Origin has more chase cards or more cards that want to be graded, but you could also argue that, you know, Astral Radiance has a slightly lower print run, which it's so hard to know. Like, it's so hard to know print runs, right? Other than if you're a store and you pick up allocations, then obviously your allocation numbers have a clear correlation to the amount of boxes that are being printed. Like if you get 100, if you're allocated 100 boxes of Lost Origin and then the next set comes out and you're only allocated 40, well, obviously the first print run isn't as big as what Lost Origins was. But those figures and numbers are hard to know exactly. Like Pokemon keep those cards so close to their chest when it comes to total print numbers. So yeah, it's exciting. We're seeing some sets that people have said that will never move, like Fusion Strike sort of sitting around that $110 a box for such a long period of time, finally making some like ridiculous gains. And it also coincides with the big one. Like once it gets sold out on Pokemon Center US, it seems to just skyrocket to the moon, which we've just seen with Astral Radiance. And the other easy way to tell, this is what I sort of tell my viewers a fair bit, and I'm just about to do a video actually on Silver Tempest regarding this, is if you just go onto eBay or TCG Player, but I predominantly use eBay because we don't have a TCG Player down in Australia, and you go price low to high, which most people do when they're looking to buy something because you want to buy it as cheap as you can and sell it as high as you can, hence the investment side of it. But if you go price low to high and you see that there's only a handful of boxes sitting below, let's take Silver Tempest for argument's sake, and like I said, I'm about to do a video on this. If we log on to eBay Australia, there's 2 boxes sitting sub 240 Australian dollars. and there is another 20 boxes sitting around 245 Australian, and then we start moving north of 250, 260, which in American dollars is probably, what's it saying there on TCG Player? In US dollars, it's 138.
138.
Yeah, 138. So in Australian dollars, you're probably talking 138 equates to probably 220, 230, which sounds about right. Like we're generally pretty on the mark with you guys. Like it's generally pretty close. If something makes a move in the US, it's probably a good indicator, and it hasn't yet in Australia, it's probably a good indication it will. Like Fusion Strike. Fusion Strike shot up for you guys a lot quicker than what it did down here in Australia. But that's what my next video was on. So back onto Silver Tempest, sorry. There's only sort of 23 or 24 boxes left on eBay Australia, sub 250 Australian dollars. And once that sells out and it's in the hands of the private market, so we don't see big box retailers with 50 or 100 or 200 boxes anymore, and it starts moving to that secondary market where private collectors then control it. That's when you instantly see that big jump. And that's why sets like, Fusion Strike and Astral Radiance will see big jumps, or has seen big jumps, because once it's in the secondary market and Pokemon Center's sold out, or the big box retailers are pretty much out, then that's when the secondary market really controls the price, and we see these massive spikes that the Sword and Shield sets have seen. So hopefully listeners, that gives you a bit of indication into the Economics 101. And a lot of people have asked me, just to keep going and digress a little bit onto Scarlet and Violet, a lot of people have kept asking, oh, well, surely Paldea is about to take off. Well, if you use that same principle on Paldea and go price low to high and log on to any, or even Google Paldea Evolved Booster Box, stores still have so much supply here in Australia, and I imagine it's similar in the US. So until that supply starts drying up, like, what reason does it have to move up in price? There is no reason for it to move up in price if there's heaps of supply everywhere. Like, it's really just, supply and demand 101. Until the demand eats up that supply, it's going to remain pretty steady. And I'm the first one that wants to see a Scarlet and Violet set start upticking in price.
Mm-hmm.
But I just don't think we're going to see it until that supply really gets eaten up. And then, these are still fresh sets. Like, they still could get printed for the next 2 years. So even if that supply does get eaten up, say in the next four or 5 months for Paldea Evolved, and it starts moving from, $107 a box to $140 a box, who knows? It could then get a decent size second print wave, and it could knock it all the way back down to 90. Like, it's hard to know.
It's interesting too that you talk about that, because it's very true, and a lot of people, I think, especially in the Whatnot community too, I hear it a lot too. I hear a lot of people talking about how Paldea Evolved, Scarlet Violet Base, Obsidian Flames, Paradox, they're all, they're printing so much of it, and it makes me chuckle, because it's like, I almost feel like every time there's a new generation, at least for the last few that I've seen, that's just kind of the what it is to start. And you can see it too, like in the US, like those sets, all of them have dropped under $100 US for booster box recently. But that doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to be a bad set, and that it's not worth investing in. And again, you can never really know at the end of the day, will Paradox Rift be a more favorable set in however many years than Obsidian Flames, or will it say, there's little things you can look at, but at the end of the day, like, you can kind of make general guesses about certain things, but it's so volatile, and things can always change, and it's always dependent on so many different factors. So, and that's the thing too, is I picked up a couple Silver Tempest ETBs recently, because I'm like, one, I didn't have any, and two, I was like, they were on sale for like $30 US. I'm like, that's a really good price, and I'm like, why not? And so it's sitting here on the shelf. And I'm like, I personally think Silver Tempest is going to be one of those sets that just goes up pretty soon here. So that's one of those sets that I'm kind of keeping my eye on more with. And actually moving into Scarlet and Violet too. It's interesting we bring that up because that's the other thing too. I feel like with every generation of fans that kind of come in, like you get some that come in with each actual Pokemon generation, but it seems like every there's an era. So you had the Game Boy era of people that grew up with Pokemon. You have um, the sort of Nintendo DS era, which was me that kind of grew up with Pokemon. You have the 3DS era that grew up with those games, and then now you kind of have the Switch era of people that grew up with that are growing up with like Sword and Shield, Paldea Evolved, Legends Arceus. So that's the other thing too. Is I remember when I was younger, a lot of people, at least that I knew, especially my brother. My brother's a great example of this. He did not like Diamond and Pearl. He really didn't. He stopped at Gen 3 and he's like, "Oh man, these new ones, they're like whatever. I don't like them." And he didn't like the
Always
legend.
happens.
And so many people were like, "Oh, this is so bad," and whatever that I knew. But me and my friends that were in our group that would take our DSs to school and to clubs and whatever, and we'd play against each other. We'd battle. We'd have the cards and we'd trade and whatever. We were enjoying it, and now we're the ones, for the most part, that are trading, collecting, selling mid-era cards. So what I've been telling people recently is you can kind of take that with each sort of generation. Yes, it's going to take a little bit for like Gen 8 and Gen 9 to really sort of see that increase in value that like Diamond and Pearl did. It's going to take a few more years, but it will get there. It's the same thing every time that happens, every couple of years. And the people that are going to be selling, collecting, trading are the people that grew up with it because they'll become nostalgic for it. They'll come back to it. And so that's what I tell people is like, don't be silly about it. Like let's think about it here for a second. What sets did you grow up with? Oh, I grew up with this. Are you collecting and trading it now? Yeah. Are all the people around you collecting, trading it now? Yeah. So it's funny. It's the older person mentality, and I'm guilty of it. Don't get me wrong. I'm guilty of not being as interested in Scarlet and Violet. But the more that I've kind of collected it and started selling and started keeping personal collection of a lot of different cards, the more I found myself enjoying Scarlet and Violet as a whole, as a generation. So that's one thing that I also tell people is, you don't have to like it, but maybe give it a try. Maybe see if there's a couple that you like. And that brings me to 151. 151 is a great example of kind of bringing in that older crowd, and so many people that I know that came from from the Whatnot community that sell there, they came back into the community because of 151. So many people did. And what's great about it is they are now connecting with the younger people of both that grew up with the mid era or that grew up with more modern stuff. And they're not only, like working together in a community, but they're talking, they're trading, they're finding similar interests, and it's creating a larger community than we'd have otherwise, at least on the platform and at least in the trading card community in general for Pokemon. So I feel like 151 was that set that has really bridged that gap between different age groups, and I think that's going to play a part in its value over the years, because at the same time it is also introducing the younger people, the very like 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 year olds to the original Pokemon 151, and they're starting to appreciate it and they're starting to like it. So sure, that might appreciate the value of vintage even more. But what I think it's really going to do is it's going to, like I said, cause this kind of connectedness between age groups, and that will in turn in a couple of years see more people give Scarlet and Violet a chance, or more people say, "Oh, it wasn't that bad," or especially older people, and they'll be like, "You know what? I think that Paradox Rift was a great set," and they'll start collecting that and stuff. So we didn't have that 10, 15 years ago. So I think that's why 151 is special in that sense, because it's going to bridge that gap and cause more people just as a whole to be interested in newer stuff. Um, that's just my personal take on 151.
Yeah, no, I agree. It's a pretty special set, 151. It's a shame they didn't have the alternate art Mewtwo and Mew that are obviously promos in the Ultra Premium collection put into the set as chase cards. But
Right.
I mean, other than that, that's what's the saying? Picking flies out of an ashtray, or whatever the saying is. So it's like it's a stellar set, and I think from my point of view with Scarlet and Violet, I think they've missed the boat on just two things, which aren't massive things, but in the grand scheme of it, they seem to be. Other than 151, the first trick that I think Scarlet and Violet has missed is not injecting enough Gen 1, 2, 3, and 4 Pokemon into the lineup. It's just so heavy with Paldean region Pokemon, which is fine when you've got a set like Paldea Evolved, like similar to Rebel Clash in Sword and Shield era. But when you're just so heavy on the new Gen 9 Pokemon, you just... and who knows, like, I'm probably speaking as a 33-year-old that's sour that he doesn't get to see the old Pokemon. But for kids, maybe they're loving it. Maybe, I don't know what percentage of the opening base or like buying base of, Pokemon cards is adults versus kids. Maybe it's 70-30 in the favor of kids. Maybe it's 80-20. Maybe it's 50-50. I don't know. But the sentiment around people our age that are investing into it or even wanting to collect into it is there's not enough Gen 1, 2, 3, and 4, or even Gen 5 Pokemon injected into the sets. So that's one trick that I think it's missed. And we see it as soon as a Gen 1 or a Gen 2 or 3 is injected into a set, it all of a sudden becomes a chase card, like the Magikarp in Paldea Evolved, the Groudon in Paradox Rift, just to give a couple of examples. And I think perhaps the second trick that it's missed is it feels like there's no new chase card, for lack of a better word, as in, if you think back across all the eras, we've gone from, the first secret rare in Team Rocket to Shining Pokemon in Neo Series to Crystal Pokemon during E-Series through to Gold Star Pokemon in EX. And then, as we go through the different generations, my point is like Level X Pokemon in Diamond and Pearl through to, what do you call it? What was Black and White era? Well, I suppose they were just called secret rares, I guess, but not the gold bordered secret rares in, like the Charizard and Blastoise from Plasma Storm, through to Mega Evolutions in XY, through to Tag Team Pokemon in Sun and Moon, through to alternate arts in Sword and Shield. Every single era has brought about a new mechanic for chase card. And it feels like Scarlet and Violet has just piggybacked Sword and Shield in changing the word alt art into art rare or illustration rare. And it's really, yes, they look and feel a little bit different, but it feels like it's just an extension of Sword and Shield, where it's a Pokemon in its environment just as a full art card, which old arts did so well. And it's like Scarlet and Violet's trying to do it again in an art rare or an illustration rare, but it just doesn't quite feel as good or as nice. And I think that's maybe the second trick that it's missed, is bringing out an all new mechanic. Like, I think we're all pretty glad that rainbow cards are gone. Some people might have loved rainbow cards, but I didn't. So I don't know, like, it's good in that sense. I like it how they've sort of tiered the rarity with, there's everything now, isn't there? Double rare and hyper rare, and
right.
Obviously illustration rare and special illustration rare. But I just feel they're the two tricks that it's missed. And who knows, the second half of Scarlet and Violet could be absolute phenomenal. There could be, a real injection of Gen 2, 3, and 4 Pokemon. And even if you look at the latest set, Temporal Forces, like the whole set's around this, ancient future and the Pokemon that are, forces of nature. Like, isn't that such a good set to throw in, a Kyogre illustration rare because he was, the ruler of the seas, or a Rayquaza because he's the ruler of the skies. Like, isn't that the perfect set to throw them in? And then all of a sudden you've got like a, because Paradox Rift had the Groudon, and then, Temporal Forces, you could have the Kyogre as a special illustration rare and a Rayquaza as a special illustration rare. And then all of a sudden everyone's going, wow, this set is phenomenal. Not only do we have those 4, extensions of the, the Raikou and Suicune and Entei, but you've got a Rayquaza chase card and a Kyogre chase card. And then it goes from a 6.5 or 7 out of 10 to a 9 out of 10.
Right. Yeah, it's interesting. It's interesting too. So I've been, at least me personally, and I've been a really big fan of this set. And I think it's interesting to hear that people talk about, like, I feel like people are, I haven't met anybody that's kind of on the fence about it. I hear people that either really love the set or they really don't love the set. And it's interesting because I feel like I'm kind of in the middle, where I like the idea of the set. I like the ancient future. I like that there are there's so many SIRs in this set alone. You have these different versions of these legendaries, which are really cool, from Gen 2, and you have the ones from Gen 5 as well, the Cobalion,
correct.
I forget, Virizion, and I forget the other guy.
Yep.
But it's cool to have those, but just like you said, I feel like it's just missing that, like an Arceus or a Rayquaza or a Kyogre or something to just kind of top it off, that like cherry on top, that one card that is the card for the set. I feel like they definitely went with a more multiple, because the set was split in half more or less, multiple top cards, instead of just one top card. And I feel like that kind of hurt the set a little bit, and that is kind of affecting it. But on that topic too, I wanted to talk about the controversy of this set too, because there's a lot of controversy going around with this set, and there's a lot of talk about the value of it, what's it gonna look like. And what I try to remind people first and foremost is this set just came out like a week and a half ago, 2 weeks ago.
That's the number one statement. It's too early, but yeah, I know what you mean. There's talks of buyouts for the top chase cards, and there's a few bit different.
It's interesting because, like, so where is it? So people talk about the really difficult pull rates for this set. Let me see. I have it. I think I had the pull rates somewhere here. I don't. They're somewhere. But basically, the pull rates for this set is about 4 times harder than Paradox Rift, or at least, again, according to what we have through TCG.
And Obsidian, like 4 times harder than Obsidian Flames, and
right.
It's sort of, it brings it in line, from what I can tell, for those SIRs to alternate arts. Like, it seems like something like that Iron Crown you've got up has, and we'd need to open, obviously people would need to open more boxes to get it accurate. It seems like it has a similar pull rate to something like a Giratina V out of Lost Origin.
Right. And I mean, you look at Raging Bull. So it's funny. Everybody that I've talked to talks about how their pull rates are so hard on this set. And like, I see a lot of YouTubers talking about how the pull rates are so weird on this set, and people can't pull anything. But I've bought 4 booster boxes, and I've pulled 4 SIRs at least, not including all the other fun cards that you get in there too. So maybe that's just stupid luck on my end. but I haven't had that experience. And another person that I know that streams and rips open Temporal Forces pack on his stream, he hasn't had any issues either. So that's kind of been, interesting. But then I hear people that do have struggles with it. So, it's interesting. Again, we're not gonna know until more of these sets get open, more people start grading cards. Just it's so early. But what's
I like
interesting,
it though. I like the tiered. I think if you've listened to a few videos, I've said it a few times. I like the tiered chase. It's it's good. It dates back to the EX era. That was the first true tiered chase, in that a gold star was roughly one in about 3 to 4 booster boxes. So
right.
if you bought yourself a case, then you're pretty much guaranteed a gold star. But other than that, like, it was, you could technically open 4 or 5 booster boxes and not pull a gold star. And the same thing can be said with alt arts from Sword and Shield. You could open 4 or 5 booster boxes and not even pull an alternate art card. So,
right.
Because there's so much, I suppose, volume of SIRs, I think the conversation should not be more SIRs are harder to pull, but because there's a higher volume of SIRs compared to the volume of alt arts that might have been in a Sword and Shield set, it makes an individual SIR harder to pull than an individual.
Right.
Because, you might open a case and pull 3 or 4 SIRs. You might open a case of Sword and Shield and pull no alternate arts. But to pull an individual SIR, because there might be a dozen of them, compared to maybe only 4 or 5 alternate arts in a Sword and Shield set, or in some cases, obviously Chilling Reign had a heap, but I think you get the point. It's just harder to pull an individual SIR, and I think that's why we're seeing prices out of the gate sort of, in some cases, uptick. People were probably expecting them to be pretty easy to get, and then on an individual basis, they've proven maybe to be a little bit harder. And then, like you said, the controversy around it, because of that, people buying them out at, when they were sitting around $50 and it's, they've pumped them back up to 80 because of that. So I don't know. I like these cards, but I also think Pokemon missed a bit of a trick as well. Like, why not call it like a ancient Raikou and not change it so much that it looks like what does it look like? A Diplodocus.
Like, yeah.
Like, a bit like they did with some of the Galarian Pokemon.
Right.
Why not? Yeah, why not just make it like an ancient Raikou or an ancient Entei? And feels like that would have resonated a lot more with young fans and the older guys that grew up with Gen 2, etc. So, but I like it. I like the set. I don't think other than 151 standalone in Scarlet and Violet, like that, I don't think you can compare that to anything else, because that's a phenomenal set. But if we're talking main sets, I don't think we've seen anything just come out of the gate hot. And I know I talk investing, so if you're an investor, we need to wait for that, especially if you're an investor in booster boxes. We need to wait for that first just banger set. And this set could have been it. All those SIRs, all you needed was, like I said, if you had 2 more SIRs and deleted maybe 2 of the average ones, if you had a Rayquaza SIR and a Kyogre SIR, all of a sudden this set goes from a 6.5 or a 7 out of 10 to a 9 out of 10.
Or even just changing the names, like you were saying, like instead of Raging Bolt, just Ancient Raikou, or something like that. That would just immediately change, I think, people's perspective on that. So yeah, it's interesting. Way too early again to tell what's gonna come of this set. I'm a firm believer in it. I think this set is going to do well. I don't imagine these SIRs are going to go down to what they were pre-release. I don't see that happening. It very well could, but I think just because we've seen how difficult it can pull an individual one, and just how much buzz is going about these cards in the first place. I think
Mm.
you're gonna see kind of like you're seeing now. I mean, the Iron Crown was over $100, and it's kind of been on a little bit of a steady decline. It's at 88. That's not too bad. Raging Bolt took a little bit of a bigger hit. It was around 90, and now it's roughly at 63. Or you can get it for 63. It's like at 71 right now. But I feel like they're not going to go down to what they were at pre-release at like $45. I don't see that happening, but that's just my unprofessional opinion for these cards. I think they're still pretty sought after from what I've seen, and I think it's possible that they might also fall because as they may go out of rotation, or as people start playing with the decks with these two, they may not like it as much, or they may find a deck that's better, or like in the next set that's coming out in a few weeks, they might find that there's a better way to get these decks than, or a better alternative to these decks than running an Iron Crown deck. Right now the big talk in the game is the Iron Crown, but that might change with the next set. So it could go back down. Who knows? So the big thing at the end of the day is just wait, just kind of chill out. What I've told people is, if you are wondering if you should keep the card or sell it, I say just keep it, because if you sell it too early and it goes up, you're going to regret it. If you sell it too early and it goes down a little bit, okay, you made a little bit of pocket change, but that card might go back up later, and it more than likely will go back up later on down the line, and you're going to regret getting rid of it. So what I tell people, like, when in doubt, just hold the card. When in doubt, just hold it. That's what you can do, and that's what you should do.
Yep. And the other thing to keep in mind is, sentiment towards a set can change like the wind. People can be like, oh, this set's, a 6.5 or a 7 out of 10. Like, yeah, the artwork's nice, but yeah, and there's, harder pull rates. But the same thing, if we relate it back to Sword and Shield, this reminds me a lot of a set like Chilling Reign. When Chilling Reign came out, it had this there was so many alternate arts, and it had this real vibe about the artwork, obviously from, Ruling the Tundra, obviously all the snow-based cards and snow-based Pokemon, and, the artwork inside it was, at the time, everyone was a bit like, yeah, it's cool, but it's, it's a 6.5 or a 7 out of 10. And now I think if you look back on that set and you line up the top 20 chase cards and you just look at them individually, you go, wow, like, the artwork is properly impressive on these cards. The Blaziken is beautiful. The 3 Galarian birds are beautiful. And I think Temporal Forces sort of reminds me of that, in that you've got that real depth of illustration rares. And if you sort of line up the top 10, including the Ghastly, you look at them and you go, you know what, the artwork's actually pretty impressive on this set. So who knows, in 2 years' time or 3 years' time, especially if Temporal Forces were, for argument's sake, to get short printed, obviously that's just speculation, but if it were, there is some talks about declines in the economy, and obviously, Pokemon card sales as a new product starting to decline a tiny bit, that printers may be turned back, because, what's the point of printing so much product if your clientele, which is obviously stores, can't take it on because they can't sell their existing stuff, which is happening. It's, we've seen a decline in my industry, which is the car industry. We're not selling as many cars as what we were. So, if they keep giving us, like, my store's not a massive store, but if they keep giving us 100 new Toyotas a month and we're only selling 50, well, eventually we're going to get overstocked and tell them to stop sending us so many. The same thing happens from a store point with distribution. You say, well, thanks heaps for the supply you've given me over the last 2 years, but I ain't selling what I was selling 2 years ago. So you're going to have to wind it back to me a little bit, because I can't sit on these boxes for 2 years and have to discount them to clear them, to move them. That's, if you look at the economy of scale. I'm not saying that's going to happen. I'm not saying they're winding back printers, but there's talks of it. If things slow down and the demand for the hobby or the new product slows down, well, at some stage the printers will have to slow down. You can't keep printing, I can't even remember the astronomical numbers that it was, but you can't keep printing that number of cards, surely. So if that does happen and people look back in 2 or 3 years and go, okay, this set was perhaps short printed a little bit compared to others, and you know what, that artwork's actually pretty special on it, even though they're not fan favorite Pokemon, because you could argue also Chilling Reign didn't have fan favorite Pokemon.
Right.
There was some solid Pokemon in there, but not absolute fan favorites like Evolving Skies had. So you could look back at that set and go, you know what, Temporal Forces is actually, you know, a really solid set. So people's opinions on sets will change like crazy. Like there's a lot of people in the hobby when Chilling Reign come out that just said, oh, pull rates are terrible and doesn't have real, you know, a real great chase card in a Blaziken. It's a bit average, like it's a 6 out of 10. And now people are just pumping its tires going, oh, Chilling Reign, the artwork in that inside that's absolutely incredible. And Blaziken is, you know, what a chase card. And the Galarian Moltres, you know, what a chase card. It's just funny how people's opinions change. And then all of it, it's funny it also coincides with the prices of things going up, like
Right.
Chilling Reign.
Yeah, and it's interesting too, because I remember when Chilling Reign came out, I remember seeing it on the shelves. It was probably at the time the most stocked just thing, that the most stocked set that they had compared to all the other ones. You go to any store, you know, if it was a Walmart or a GameStop or a Target or whatever store you would go to, where I'm at, it was just Chilling Reign everything. There was nothing else, and it was full. The caps were full with Chilling Reign. And I remember at one point, like, I saw a lot of listings for Chilling Reign booster packs at like $2, $3, $2.75, something like that. And it's funny now, looking at that, not only has that gone up, but within the last 2 months, maybe 3, it's just shot up. Now the booster box is like 200 US, and then sometimes more. I see more higher listings for it too that are selling. So you make such a great point, is people's opinions just kind of just seem to change just on the fly. It can happen at any moment for any set. And so I think that's another very, very good piece of advice for people to take into account, whether they're collecting, investing, or what have you, is, you know, just because people are telling you something is not great and worth it, you know, don't sleep on it. Don't, you know, if you like it, you know, collect it and invest in it. You know, I hardly ever see things go below retail in this day and age, at least in terms of sealed product.
Exactly.
It's very, very rare.
Chilling Reign's a great example because it was probably about this time last year. So yeah, probably April last year when I started really buying Chilling Reign booster boxes. And I just thought to myself, you know what, exact same scenario that I spoke about with, say, Silver Tempest, how I was looking on eBay and, you know, most of the major stores were starting to sell out, and, you know, maybe some of the private listings had 2 or 3 boxes, or the major stores had 5 or 6 boxes left. And I'm like, you know what, this thing's a couple of months away from just being really low on supply. And then all of a sudden, you know, people think back and go, you know what, these cards were actually pretty special, because if you look at the top 20 chase cards, particularly the value that they hold, like the depth of chase inside Chilling Reign, I was just like, you know what, this is a good pickup at the price it is. Supply's about to run out, and the set's better than what the sentiment of the community says it is, so it's going to go up. So that's when you go and pull the trigger on it and enjoy the fruits of your labor when it goes to $200 a box a year later. Because, you know, 140 US, you know, that equates to about 220 Australian, which is about what I was buying them at April last year. In Australia now, you know, you're going to have to spend 350 Australian to buy yourself, I think at least, I haven't checked a Chilling Reign booster box for a little while, but probably at least 350 Australian to get yourself a box. And a lot of people say that, you know, they compare, you know, Pokemon investing to things like the share market. And, you know, if you were to be able to buy a share at 220 Australian dollars, or if you work off US dollars for your listeners, 140 US dollars, and in a 12-month period, your share price goes from 140 to 200, you'd be pretty happy. Now, of course, it's not as easy as a share market. You can't just click a button to say, I want to sell my stocks, and you pay your $10 brokerage fee and then the money's in your account 3 days later. It's not as easy as that, but it's more fun. So, what sort of share can you buy that you go, okay, I picked it up at 140 because, I was listening to some investment talk about it and people were saying this thing's going to move. And then all of a sudden it goes to 200 in the space of 12 months. And whatever that works out to be, it's about a 45% increase.
Yeah, roughly. Yeah.
So, what sort of share, you'd be pretty happy if you've almost had that sort of gain in a 12-month period, coupled with, if you were spreading your investments across the board more broadly, Fusion Strike, Evolving Skies. Imagine, if you managed to pick up Evolving Skies a year ago, it was probably sitting around 350 maybe US a year ago.
Yeah.
And people were going, oh no, it's done. It's, that's gone to the moon way too quickly. And then all of a sudden, 12 months later, you've doubled your money. So you've had 100% increase. So it can be an extremely fun way to build up a portfolio of sealed product or cards or singles, of course, that can increase in value. And the hardest part's selling them.
Right.
When you don't have any emotional attachment to it, it's easy to sell, but Pokemon's one of those things people get emotionally attached to. We all get emotionally attached to cards that we pull and sealed product that we put in an Ultra Pro case and leave on the shelf, and you're just like, oh, I don't want to sell my Evolving Skies booster box. Sorry, you go.
No. I sell so many cards throughout the week, and packs. Recently on a stream, we did a booster box break for Temporal Forces. It was really hype. We had music. We had like a decent amount of viewers, and people are buying in at packs, outbidding each other because they think like, oh, this is getting closer to the end of the box, and we still haven't pulled an SIR. I'm gonna take it, whatever. And people are just buying packs, and it's a fun time. And it's funny because every card that I had wanted out of this set for myself personally that I could not pull in a booster box and a half that I opened for myself. They pulled in just the one booster box. They pulled the Gengar, they pulled the Morty's Conviction, they pulled the Raging Bolt, they pulled the Iron Crown EX right at the end. And like, I was happy for my viewers. I'm like, good on you guys. And it was one of those things where it's like, it's in my hands and I'm like, I don't want to get rid. I don't want to have to send this out, So that's the other thing too, is like, I especially when I'm selling singles and it's cards that I know I've bought in like a lot. Those will be the other things that I do. I'll go to like garage sales or stuff like that, and I'll buy lots of cards and I'll piece through them, and okay, there's a card here that's worth like $90. Cool, perfect. But then I'll hold it for a little bit until it sells, and then when push comes to shove and it comes to sell, I'm like, oh, I don't want to get rid of it. It's like a foster child, or like when you foster a dog or a child, and you don't want to let it go because you've grown so attached. And so that's the hard part, but it's also a little fun. It's fun to mess around with that. And you made I think you make it this point in multiple videos, but you made one recently that really stuck with me. And it's if you're not having fun, that's what it's about. That's what you should be having fun in investing and collecting Pokemon. You really should be having fun, because if you're not, at the end of the day, it's gonna be just an absolute just slug to just sell and to do all this stuff, and you might end up selling things slower, and you might be losing money because you're just not interested into it. And so that piece of advice just stuck with me.
That's an important part, because the other side of the coin is there is also a little bit of shade that gets thrown at Pokemon investors, and a lot of it comes around the sentiment of, Pokemon's a card game for kids, and if you're hoarding away boxes, well, kids don't get to open it. If you put your black hat on and disagree at that point, the disagreement would be, well, hold on, this stock sits on shelves for months, and a new set comes out every 3 months or 2 months. And, everyone's got an opportunity to buy it. Just because someone on a small scale buys up one case of each set or two cases of each set or two booster boxes of each set to keep sealed, it's the smallest drop in the ocean that's going to have the most tiny of impact on whether or not other people can buy the product. I think the only shade that does deserve to be thrown at anyone is when, I think we've seen a few videos go around the internet lately of, different maybe local stores going into a local Walmart and buying out all the 151 products so no one else can buy it from Walmart and then reselling it at a higher price. Like, that's a completely different kettle of fish. That sort of stuff's not okay. But in terms of people just buying online off a local store or maybe buying a case or two off their local gaming store because they've got a good relationship, and seeing if they can have a bit of fun with it and make a bit of profit off it in the long run. Like, we're not going to get rich off it. I think the only person that maybe does is Alpha Rudy from Alpha Investments. Man, that guy pours some capital into it and has the means to sell it or sell that volume.
Right.
So, yeah, I think you've hit the nail on the head there. You got to have fun with it. And, if any shade ever gets thrown my way, which does very, very rarely, I'm a pretty chilled out guy. I don't really take too much notice of it. I don't think I'm doing any damage to the hobby by keeping a few boxes or cases stashed away.
Well, and I tell people too, it's like, for me, if I don't end up selling it, I'm keeping it just to keep it. So that it's not like I'm getting any less enjoyment by keeping it. And if I do sell it, you could argue
someone else gets to enjoy it.
Someone else is going to enjoy it, and I had my time to enjoy the time that I had it with it too. So again, everybody's different, and I think luckily I've had maybe one or two experiences that weren't even directed towards me specifically, but for the most part, it seems like people are pretty understanding if you just make it clear, like, hey, I enjoy this. If you're again, kind of like you were saying, we actually had a local card shop too. Obviously, will not name it or where it's at, but I had a local card shop here that did just that with the 151, the Japanese sets, and they bought them all. They bought them all from these local people that were selling them at like regular retail price, and then they bought up all the English 151, just everything, poster collections, UPCs, everything from all the Targets, Walmarts, everything within like a 15-mile radius. And I found this out from somebody that worked there, or that still works there, and they ended up selling it in their store with like a 25% increase almost, just because you can't get it in the area at all unless you were to order from like Amazon. And again, most people don't feel comfortable ordering cards off of like Amazon, or people don't want to wait to order off of like the Pokemon website or off of like a card store online or wherever.
Yeah, they want to get in their hand right away.
So they take advantage of that. And it's just, I remember it was such a huge controversy that they lost so much business that they went from 2 stores in the local area to now they're on their own. They only have one, because the other one, everybody kind of just started like protested it in their own way. They were going on like Reddit. They went on the local forums, on the local pages, on Facebook, and they said, don't go to the store because they're doing this. And sure enough, and so
there's an old saying, sorry to interrupt, there's an old saying, and I'll let you continue in a sec, an old saying that says fast money equals slow problems.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, absolutely. No, I was pretty much done. And no, that's right on the money. And I think once people just kind of understand that that's not how we are, and that's not how we're aiming to be, hopefully more people kind of understand, and they'll get into the investment side themselves. I feel like there's a lot of people that are very hesitant to go in simply for the fact that people can be very negative towards people that do, so they don't want to catch that flack or that resistance. And so that's kind of what I tell people is just do it. If you want to do it, get into it. You're not doing anything morally wrong by doing it. You're doing it for you. You're doing it to invest, to collect, and do whatever you want to do. like I feel like with a lot of us that invest, we also collect, we rip open stuff from time to time. It's not like we don't do that at all. And I think the majority of people that invest and sell, even people that sell large quantities, we all know that they open stuff from time to time. That it is an irresistible urge that, some people
Exactly.
more than others, but it,
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 it
it
needs to be
happens,
scrapped.
you
Yep.
know. So it's interesting, but um, a couple more things that I wanted to talk about before we finish up here. I
Yep.
wanted to talk about UPC since we were talking about UPCs. Um, I've seen this UPC in my shop, or my local shop, the one that I actually go to that didn't do all those things. They have quite a few of these Charizard Sword and Shield UPCs, the ones that have like the Evolving Skies packs in it, the Fusion
Yep.
Strike, all those good packs. And even on the market right now, it's still roughly retail price here in the US, and it's actually kind of gone down a bit in
Yep.
the last couple months. So I guess, in your opinion, is this a UPC to kind of keep your eye on, to maybe invest in, and something that for people that are looking at it, do you think it's a good investment?
Yeah, same thing. It's just that supply thing. We all know this got, compared to, say, Celebrations UPC, which is the previous UPC before the Sword and Shield UPC, or as it's colloquially called, the Charizard UPC. It it was just printed so much more. But having said that, there is also, it ticks all the boxes, and it almost looks like the market price history of it shouldn't look that way. Like, it doesn't really correlate with the value that you get inside the box.
Right.
And it's simply to do with the amount of supply of it that's on the market. It's, like you said, it's still in your shop. You go onto eBay, it's everywhere. So many people, I think, bought it thinking, without opening it, but thinking it would do something similar to the Celebrations UPC. And then they just got caught out that it was not, it was nowhere near the short printing sort of levels that the Celebrations UPC had. And it was printed to the absolute moon. And we're still stuck with heaps of supply on it. So until that supply sort of erodes, I don't think we're going to see a price movement on it. So in terms of investing in it, I would do the same scenario that I do on everything else. I would look at the supply levels, and you might be able to buy it, or you might have bought that box at 95 US when it first came out. And it might take 3 years for it to move to or 4 years for it to move to a 200 US premium collection. Or you can wait that 12 or 18 months from now and realize that, hey, supply for it's really starting to dry up. Yes, it's moved to 130 or 140, but is now the time to buy because it's about to get that spike. Similar to something like that's happened with Fusion Strike, how it sat and sat and sat for 2 years and then bang.
Yeah.
So yeah, if you bought it 4 months ago, you might have paid more than someone that bought it at release, but you've also seen massive gains in a 4-month period compared to the person that bought it at release and waited 2.5 years to see those gains. So this is like, it's got all the fundamentals, this. And the trend line's up. So the trend line will keep going up. It's got, like you said, some of the best Sword and Shield sets sitting inside there, in Evolving Skies and Fusion Strike, etc. It's got 3 absolutely beautiful promos. And in terms of the sort of people that will open this in the future, it's going to be YouTubers, because you've got such a mix of, and people like yourself, YouTubers and streamers, you've got such a mix of Sword and Shield sets inside there. It's like a bit of a combination of all the best Sword and Shield sets with 3 amazing Charizard promos. Like, what's not to like about it? What's not to like about it? In 5 years' time, if someone wants to do a YouTube video and open 3 Charizard UPCs to see, hey guys, here's the Fusion Strike packs, here's the Evolving Skies packs, here's the Brilliant Stars packs, what can we pull? Like, that is going to be an awesome video. People will want to watch that. So in terms of, do I think it's a good investment? Yes. Will it go up quickly right now? No. Will it continue to trend upwards for the next 12 months? Yes. Once supply runs out of it, that's when we'll start to see a real uptick in price on it. So I don't really get that dip down. Maybe that's a couple of anomalies in sales, or maybe that's just normal. You know, things sort of follow a worm on their way up rather than just a direct straight line up. But yeah, that's sort of my take on the Charizard UPC.
Yeah, it was interesting too, just because it popped in my head the other day when I was walking through the shop. I'm like, wait, they still have these, huh? And I'm like looking at the box. I'm like, I just get it. And they were selling it. It was like 105. I'm like, I mean, it's a little above what it came out at, but I mean, that's still pretty good. So I'm like, all right. So I went and I bought 2 of them, and they're just here. And I'm like, okay, cool. You know, I'm thinking I might do one as a big show thing in a few months or something. And if I don't, I don't. It just sits there. But I think it's just such a cool UPC. I think, again, it's Charizard. Everybody loves Charizard. That's going to help age it very well. Just that on its own. And then obviously the fact that you have, like you said, Evolving Skies, Fusion Strike, Brilliant Stars, just arguably some of the best sets from that era. You know, people are really going to kind of go for that later on. So no, I very much agree. I think that's a perfect way to put it. Is short term, you're not going to see anything crazy, but you're going to see this just incremental, just increase little by little. It'll go up and down, but it's it's going to keep going up. It's not going to fall down. It can only go up from here. So I fully
agree with that. Yeah.
The next thing too that I'm curious about. So lately, we've seen a huge, well, I say huge, it hasn't been crazy, but we've seen a lot, like a pretty big dip in English 151 prices, even though it isn't as prevalent in the stores anymore. But like, you know, you look at like the Erica's Invitation SIR, it went from 82 and now it's roughly at $20 US. That's insane. The Zapdos, beautiful card that a lot of people, including myself, really wanted. It was like almost at $60 market, and then now it's at 35. Even the Charizard took a little bit of a dip there. So I'm curious. One, I have my suspicions on why this is, but I'm curious to hear what you think of this and what you think this, or what your view is on the future of this. And I've heard people kind of panicking, and I'm like, why are you panicking? Like it's 151. It's not, you know, it's 151, and 2, like, yes, you're gonna see these drops, but it seems like people don't know why. And I'm curious to hear your view on that.
Well, I know I always, I might almost sound like a broken record. I always seem to go back to either one or two things, supply or demand. And you can extrapolate both of those things out to so many different factors. But in this one, it's just demand. What happened with 151 is it brought so many people back into the hobby, like more than I think we'll ever realize. But then out of all those people that come back to the hobby, I can remember reading a stat somewhere during the COVID time that the average gen, whatever they call our generation, like my generation, you know, people in their, you know, 30s and whatnot. So people that have got back into the hobby because, you know, during the COVID era, they might have been bored and sitting at home, or during this instance, obviously 151, they've gone, oh, that's, you know, they're all the Pokemon I used to collect during base set and fossil and jungle. Like, let's get back into it. The stat was something like that average gen, whatever we are, what are we, Gen Y, or I don't even know. There's that many generations.
It's like Gen, like the newest one, Gen, is it Gen?
I think we're Gen Y. Gen Y, is it when you're in your 30s?
I think it's Gen Y technically. Or anyway. I think it's called Millennial. I think is the.
Well, yeah, we'll call ourselves that. But yeah, the stat was something like the average Gen Y that got back into the Pokemon card hobby during COVID lasted for 4 months. And I don't know that's the truth in this scenario, is why we're seeing price drops, but that's my estimate at why we're seeing price drops, or probably one of the main unknown reasons that's sort of hidden away is that brought so many people back into the hobby, which created almost this mini artificial boom towards the set. And then as that demand's dropped off and those people have left the hobby, or maybe if they've bought the chase cards that they want and they've just popped them away in the cupboard or in a binder or whatever it might be, and they've left the hobby, all of a sudden the demand drops off, and then we see prices drop down. That's, I guess, that would almost, I feel like that would be my main reason, is that, yeah, the demand, obviously newer sets have come out as well, so the demand starts dropping off. And then from a supply point of view, of course, each day that goes by, more 151 packs get opened, even though it might not be in the store or in stores as much, they're still getting opened. So it's that simple ratio between supply and demand. That's, hey, poor Erica's invitation, hey?
That one took a really big hit. I remember, yeah, that one.
Oh, yeah. That's off a cliff.
Very, very big dip. And it's crazy. I remember pulling that card and I was like, oh, you know, and it's crazy to me that one in particular, and some of the others too. I like even seeing a Charizard go, what was it, 12% down? Yeah, 12% down. I mean, that's still, that's pretty significant. 12%, especially on a card that was where it was at 125, almost 130. But
yep,
there's so this is so I think another reason why we're seeing a decline continue as well is the popularity of Japanese over English 151. And the biggest reason for that is the Master Ball Hollows and the reverse hollows. And I've said this since I've started getting back into this hobby, is, in my opinion, English reverse hollows are not what they were in Sword and Shield era and before. They used to be a lot more vibrant, a lot more like hollow, like, you know, you could see it a lot more.
If you started in, like you said, you had binders of EX era, every single EX era set had a different reverse hollow pattern.
Right.
And it's like, why wouldn't you do that? I know, you know, you're printing to mass scale, and maybe it's a pain in the backside to have to print a different and set up the printers to print different reverse hollow patterns for every set. But I don't know, is that a little cool mechanic they could bring back? Like, why not each new set have a different reverse hollow pattern?
It just feels so lazy to me. Like,
yeah,
like right now, like right now in my hand, I have a Haunter and a Meditite from Temporal Forces. These were pulled from a pack earlier, and it's crazy to me that reverse hollows are considered bulk now. That I'm looking at, or by some people at least.
100%. Like, try buying a nice EX era, like a mint condition reverse hollow. They are not cheap. Even
black and white era reverse hollows are starting to see that kind of rise, because people are starting to realize, like, wait a minute, these were actually kind of nice. And it just makes me sad, because there's some really good artworks that are still going around in these newer sets, and they just get hindered by this kind of dull, like, you could barely even call it a hollow. It's just so faint and dark, and it's like, all right, I don't want this. So
what about Legendary Collection? Like, literally every single booster pack of Legendary Collection had a reverse hollow, and look at those.
Yeah,
the Fireworks reverse hollow.
And I think that's a big part of, at least when it comes to 151, why it's still going down. And it's because, although, like, obviously the Erica's Invitation is not a reverse hollow, but look at Japanese 151. They have been so consistent in being $200 US for a booster box up until recently, because there's reprints coming out, which is another thing I wanted to get to with that. But even with that, you know, we haven't heard anything from an English 151 reprint. We haven't heard anything from that. So that's why I think a lot of the focus and attention has turned more to the Japanese 151 over, and it's very rare, at least in the modern sets, for a Japanese version of the set to be more coveted than the English version. It's usually the English version that's, you know, more sought after. But in this case, I think
and that's exactly what you've hit the nail on the head. It's the reverse hollow, the obviously one Master Ball reverse hollow seeded per box, and also a couple more chase cards in the, you know, SAR Mew and Mewtwo, which come as promos in the English side.
Right.
And even on that though, the Master Ball was such a brilliant idea, but it's also a bit dull even on Japanese 151. Like it's so hard to
Right.
tell. You can pull one out unless you've got good eyes and you get it in the right light. You're like, okay, yep, yeah, it's a Master Ball. So it's oh, why don't they do anything special anymore? Why not? I'm not saying bring back the firework hollow pattern from Legendary Collection, but even the Master Ball hollow, like it's a wow factor for people. But why not
Right.
actually make it a wow factor? Because it's damn hard to see.
Well, like I was looking at these like
Average execution.
I was looking at these McDonald's promos that I had from Black and White, and
Yep.
those are really cool because they have like unique patterns on the hollows. Cracked ice cards are my absolute favorite.
Yeah,
Cracked ice
cracked
hollows
ice.
are so beautiful. I love them
That's
to
a really
death.
good reverse hollow idea. The cracked ice. Like,
You
why don't
know,
they do that?
just do that, or like Disney 100 does it. You know, I've started collecting those cards because uh, they have on their regular like cards, you get maybe three. I don't know what they're called in the Disney card 100 sets, but I just call them cracked ice because they're essentially the same effect and they're just as vibrant as they were on the Pokemon cards. But you get like three or four of those with that sort of effect per pack. And it's like, you know, if they can do it on the Disney 100 cards, there's no reason why they can't at least do something a little more creative and something a little more
Yeah.
valuable.
And you hold anything Bandai in your hand at the moment? Like, I don't know if you've cracked any One Piece open or if you've cracked any
Right.
of the Dragon Ball Fusion World open. That is, you look at those cards and you pull a hit and you're just like, bar out. The texture, the quality, and it's like, hey, is Pokemon lacking a little bit behind with the? Why didn't they do something a bit more special for Scarlet? Why haven't they done anything a bit more special for a while? Like, whether it's a reverse hollow texture, it feels like nothing special's happened for old arts are special, but it feels like nothing absolutely spectacular has happened for a while. And I don't think Pokemon's going to get left in the dust by any means. It's the
No.
world's most popular anime, but and franchise. But are they like basking in their own sunlight a little bit too much? Like, have they put the tools down? Maybe it's time to go back to the drawing board and think of something cool to wow the audience with again.
I agree. I think you know, I think the one thing that they did do with temporal forces, and I think it's just because of the lack of sheer just not having anything new, was
Oh,
the
the
ace
ace spec?
spec card.
Yeah.
I thought they were cool. I'm like, see, this is what we need. Like, why don't we have like more like like the having like a reverse hollow be like an ace spec card, having that sort of design, like the prismatic design on it. Like you could do if they're printing the ace spec cards like this, they could do a reverse hollow like that, or some hollows. They could even just do hollows like this.
100%.
You know, there's no reason why they can't, and I feel like they should because then people, it's just natural. People would immediately be like, "Wow, that's cool, that's unique. I want to buy that. I want that card." And again, you see that with
Yep.
the ace spec cards, even though they are playable. I see people collecting them just because they think they're cool. Like the Master Ball ace spec card is a really cool card. A lot of people are wanting that one just because it's the Master Ball card. Um, so it's just it's a little disappointing that we haven't really seen anything, you know, crazy create. Like we got like even VMAX, like, you know, at least that was something. I feel like it just recently within the last few sets it's just kind of felt very stagnant in uh this formula of, okay, well, we have, you know, these SIRs, we have these, and then every pack is going to be the same on the reverse hollow and then a hollow, just whatever.
Yep.
There's
Yep.
just no diversity anymore. I feel like
I
until
agree.
it's improved. And it's funny too because it's like there's a new English set coming out in like 3 weeks already.
No, I know
Temporal
already.
Forces just came out, and Twilight Masquerade is coming out really soon. And you know, I'll be honest, I've bought a couple booster or a couple cases of booster boxes just because, one, to keep like a couple for myself, but also to sell on the stream because it's going to be exciting. People are going to be wanted at the beginning. And then after that, who knows where it goes? But I feel like it's so detrimental to have two sets that are supposed to be, like really big sets for them and sets that they're trying to push be so
Yep.
close together. And neither of them, at least again, from what I've seen, neither of them do anything super crazy. Like I've opened a lot of Crimson Haze. I've looked at the card list that we have so far in Crimson Haze.
Yep.
And then I know Masks of Change comes out soon, which is essentially the other half.
Yep.
And they released the card list for those, and I'm just looking at it. I'm like, okay, there's nothing
Yeah.
crazy here, and it's just kind of sad because it's like, man, this set is gonna take a lot of time to appreciate any sort of value, and
Yep.
two, that means I gotta at least wait longer for that, that big that banger set that you were talking about, and I hope that 151 isn't, not because it's bad or anything, but I hope that 151 isn't the banger
The
set
only,
for,
yeah.
I hope we get a 151, but like an original thing, something new, I
I
hope we
agree.
get.
Like what we see so far from Twilight Masquerade, which essentially lines up with, I think it lines up with Chilling Reign from Sword and Shield, because that's what we're up to, isn't it? Six, five. What are we up to? Five. Scarlet and Violet 5 is
Five.
Temporal Forces, which lines up with Battle Styles, Base, Rebel Clash, Darkness Ablaze, Viva Voltage. Yeah, Battle Styles. So Scarlet and Violet 6 will line up with Chilling Reign, and it's like, well, Chilling Reign was a massive step in the right direction. That's when Sword and Shield was, out of second gear into third and fourth. So
Right.
yeah, like Twilight Masquerade doesn't. The Greninja sort of looks cool, but in the same token, it doesn't. It looks like some weird painting that you'd have up on your wall in the in your Florida mansion. But
I think
I
the
don't
I
know.
think the Infernape will definitely be a good chaser card.
Yeah, yeah,
That'll be good. And again, for a
agree.
lot of people that grew up with, Gen 4 starters, they'll look at that and be like, okay, cool. But again, it's just like you just have a couple cards. You just don't have anything that really sticks out. And it's so easy for them to do too. It's not like, it's just one extra card that you can put. And you don't even have to put that many. You can make it a hard card to pull. It's just
Yep.
it's a little interesting to
And
me that they haven't done that.
literally one or two chase cards can carry a set.
Yeah.
Like Silver Tempest, Rayquaza and VMAX is pretty good from Trainer Gallery, but literally if it didn't have a Lugia, that set would be nowhere. And because it's got that Lugia, it literally carries the whole set.
Right.
So it's one, two, maybe three, just banger chase cards per set, and all of a sudden. But anyway, like I said, sentiments change. Like I said before, sentiments change. People might look back and go, "Hey, the Greninja and Infernape are." They might also make them hard cards to pull. They might be 1 in 800 packs to pull the, Greninja or Infernape, and all of a sudden it's holding the same sort of weight, the Infernape, as like the Blaziken from Chilling Reign. Who knows?
Yeah.
Time will
And,
tell.
yeah,
I,
only time will tell. Um, and yeah, we'll see where it goes. I mean, I'm excited for Twilight Masquerade solely for the ETB. I think the ETB art
yeah,
that they have
cool.
on there is just so cool. That kind of green and black. I feel like ETBs are they're their own market in their own ways, and it's so funny
Yeah.
because I think it's from the box art or whatever. So that's definitely one that I kind of put my eye on, and I'm like, yeah, I think I'll get a couple of those just because it's a nice piece to put on the wall, but two, I think at least the ETB on its own might be, depending on what the promo card is, that ETB might see uh, better appreciation than, say, maybe the singles or the booster box, or it kind of depends. But
Mm.
I'm excited. That's kind of my get. I don't know. It's just a weird intuition that I have with that ETB. I feel like it's gonna be, hopefully the set's great, because if the set's great, then okay, cool. But if the ETB is any indication, maybe we might get something. I don't know. I'd love to see something new, different. Like even if they did like SIRs that were like Terra, where like it was the whole card was like I
Mm.
forget what it's called, but it's like the whole card's like one big crystal, and then the Pokemon is on there and it has the shape of a crystal. And you know what? Because that's kind of the theme of the sets is the terraforms. Um,
Yeah, and don't forget
so
they're talking about bringing back the Mega Evolutions.
so see that could also be huge too. I know the Mega Evolutions. Those cards, oh, man, those cards are they're so pretty. Over the last few sets that had them, um, I think I think my favorite two Mega Evolutions cards are the Mega Blastoise and then the Mega Gengar EX that I have.
Mm.
Those two are just
Yeah,
my absolute favorites. They're so cool and they're so unique too. And so I hope they do something with them. There's no reason not to. I hope they don't just have a Mega Evolution and then it's just a gray border with the thing. I hope they do something a little different with it.
I hope
But
so too. We need it.
absolutely. Well, we've kind of run out of time here. But I want to thank you, Pokeos,
Yeah,
for
thanks for having me, mate.
joining me, for sitting down, talking, having a nice discussion about some interesting topics and about something that we both love doing, and many of you listening love doing as well. If you guys haven't checked out Pokeoz's channel on YouTube, I will have a link to it in the episode notes as well as in the description for it as well. Please go check him out. He's an awesome guy, has great content, like pretty much weekly. I'm always expecting it, and it's such a fun thing to wake up to, because usually I'll wake up at like 6 in the morning and you have already uploaded the video, and I'll drink it with my coffee. Yeah, so I'll wake up with it. I'm like, this is a great video. So definitely go give him a subscription on YouTube. He really deserves it. He makes great stuff, and we need more people like him to kind of cover these topics and cover things in the Pokemon TCG and just in the franchise in general, to have that kind of attitude. So I appreciate you being on here with me again.
Yeah, thanks
Yeah.
heaps for having me.
Thank you, everybody, for tuning into PokeYap once again. Hope you've had a splendid morning, or evening, or afternoon, whenever you're listening and wherever you're listening from. Thank you for joining me. This was PokeVid, your host, and until next time. Or evening, or afternoon, whenever you're listening and wherever you're listening from. Thank you for joining me. This was PokeVid, your host, and until next time.